that's a little bit about why I do the work, a little bit of the history. SASHA Center. So a lot of people say, who are we? How did we come into existence? Well, actually, SASHA stands for Sexual Assault Services for Holistic Healing and Awareness, where we are unapologetically servicing communities of color, and in particular concentrating on the African American community. One of the things that I want to say is what happened right before we developed the program was, are you all familiar with Take Back the Night? I know Wayne State University has one. They happen all over. And so when I was working at the Rape Counseling Center, they determined or found out that I actually write poetry. And so they asked me to come and speak at all these Take Back the Nights all over the state, right? Lucky me, happy. I was glad to be there. Rah-rah, systems by, I like making noise. So one of the things that I noticed that at every Take Back the Night I went to, it was never organized by or led by women of color, and you could count the women of color on your hand. And so I kept noticing that. One of the other things that I noticed is when I worked at the Rape Counseling Center and I carried the pager, depending on who called the pager for us to go downstairs and answer the emergency room, when we have a victim in the emergency room at that very live time, I would know. It got so routine, I would know who was interfacing in the emergency room based on who called me and what they said. If it was the security guard, get down here when you can, she was a woman of color, homeless, or had some kind of appearance of a drug issue. If I got a call from the doctor, and the doctor said, hurry up and get down here. Matter of fact, all of her stuff has been done. All of her meds have been taken care of. Go through the lobby first. Her family is waiting. Talk to them first. Hurry up. And then get here as soon as you can. She was either a white woman, and it didn't matter if she was a substance abuser or not, or she was a black woman that was politically or religiously connected in the city of Detroit. So that speaks to the economics, that speaks to the race, that speaks to the socioeconomic status, that speaks to all of that. And I started asking for supervision. Like, I know what the fuck I'm watching. I see it. I'm sorry, my language is strong, Susan. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm like, am I seeing this? What is my eyes telling me? And so my supervisor was so patient with me. Because, I mean, they would always tease me and say, you know, Kalimah, you were just born at the wrong time. You should have been born sooner so you could have been out there in the streets. I said, no, we still need to be out here. Angela Davis said it best. Black women are in desperate need of an anti-rape movement. And we still are, right? So, in terms of thinking about self-care, I had heard enough stories by 2005. I had experienced enough where I stopped asking myself when I was going to be sexually assaulted again, but who or whatever. It was just so much. And I had to engage in some self-care. And one of the things that I did was I quit. I didn't have another job. I happened to also know how to do natural hair. And I had a salon, and I had enough customers that would pay my way. I could eat, you know. And I didn't have a plan. The Michigan Coalition, all those years ago, said, no, you just can't lead a movement now. We got to get you, you know, can you do something? So what I started doing was workshops and teaching all over the country around these issues. And that's how I met Lori. We were at a conference. But at any rate, I continued to advise the coalition. And I just took off. And in the meantime, I was still talking at these Take Back the Nights, still doing guest speaking, still doing trainings. And what happened, and I'm telling you this to get to the part about what happened with SASHA Center, because SASHA Center hadn't been created at that point. I went to a conference, workshop, Take Back the Night kind of event in an out-county area. I won't name the agency. I was there. And a therapist walked up to me and said, so Kalimah, what do you think about, so guess who I saw? And I said, who? Your mayor, Kwame Kilpatrick. And I said, okay. And she says, you know, he was at this yoga spot in Grosse Pointe. There was a lot going on with Kwame at the time, all in the news every day, all day. And I said, I'm sure he could use some yoga. And then she said, yeah, you know, I said, well, would it happen to be hot yoga? Yeah, how do you know about hot yoga? Like, I can't know about hot yoga. Then I said, well, I mean, Bikram, you know, one of my girlfriends who's a stay-at-home mom, boom, you wasn't expecting me to say that, goes to a place like that, and she invited me, and I wouldn't go. And anyway, she said, and he had a driver. I said, most politicians in our city have drivers. And then she said, well, aren't you just sick of what he's doing right now? I said, no, I'm getting somewhere. I said, yeah, I'm disappointed in him. I'm also disappointed in one of our politicians up in Lansing's husband who got caught with a hoe. But his story was only shown on the news twice. But every night when I go home, I got to see about Kwame, I got to see about my soror, and my Sands. These women are my friends, both of them. And so she said, and I said, why do you think that is? She said, oh, it's because of oppression and racism. I said, oh, you got all the right answers. Okay, so let's go on Lifetime. Look around this room. Where are the black women? We're in a county where I know black women live, and they're not being engaged. Okay, let's take another look. Let's look at your staff. Where are the black women? As a matter of fact, you think you're doing the job by having me as a black woman here speaking for you once a year. And that's not getting it. And she was cool. You know, we continued to talk about it. And I went home that night and I sat on the edge of my bed and I said, you need to start your own agency for black women. And I was like, bullshit, went to sleep. And I don't know if President Obama had a story on, he was running for president at the time or getting ready to announce, and he talked about his daughter. I don't know. But in the middle of my sleep, in twilight, we're talking between 3 and 5, it sounded like wind. Didn't have a male or female voice. It sounded like a whisper. Started your own agency and named it SASHA. And I sat straight up in the bed and I said, what? I said, okay. So I went, we go and Google. Want to make sure anybody else got their name, because as an MC, I know names are important. You got to have trademarks and copyright. So I said, let me see if there's an organization like this in the country. It was not. There was a SASHA in Canada. And it was still bright early in the morning. I didn't want to call and wake Paula up. This is her coworker I'm talking about. Paula, she's one of my good friends. I didn't want to call Paula at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So I waited till like 7:30. So I called her and I said, Paula, girl, I had this dream. I don't know what it's about. I just need to tell somebody. And she said, okay. And I told her. She said, I'll call you back. About an hour later, she called me back and she said, first of all, Kalimah, as a coalition and as your friend and as your mentor, and she's all of that to me, we cannot let you have a dream like that and not make it come true. So I talked to the executive director, and we're going to give you free pro bono legal services until your 501c3 is off the ground. Wow. And you're about to get an email, just start answering emails. And it took us 2 years. And I kept losing my way, and I kept losing my way. And the one good thing about the attorney that they gave me, she was also a Reiki master. Something that she would never share openly. But she told me later. And she said, this will happen in the time that it needs to happen, but we're going to do it right. I said, okay. So in 2010, early 2010, we submitted all this stuff, and I actually got a job as a tenure-track professor at Mary Grove teaching the social work by that time. And in between that time, we were doing stuff that was informed by folks like Lori that's doing the work. Remember we had the protest at R. Kelly's concert? So SASHA Center started out by being very activism and very ground roots in terms of what we did. We literally had 8 people, I think 3 men and the rest of us were women, organizing a protest, a silent protest at an R. Kelly concert. We didn't want to stop people from going in. We just wanted them to taste out your mouth while you in there rocking and rolling and throwing your hands in the air. Have something for you to think about. And we didn't want to traumatize folks, so we had a sign about where to call if you needed help in this way. But this started a lot of conversation about rape in our community, silencing of us talking about rape in our community. But at any rate, we kept on going, and we were very deliberate about who informs us. And we're very deliberate about understanding that we as an organization have to do it differently. And so when I say we're unapologetic, what I mean by that is that, yes, we did get some funding from the federal government. Yes, the federal government says best practices say that you're supposed to do a support group with survivors of date rape only, or survivors of stranger rape only, or survivors or people who've experienced sexual assault. I mean, how are you going to say to someone or call someone a survivor when in our communities we don't even use that kind of language? So we're very deliberate in our language when we say those who have experienced sexual assault. And we let them tell us whether they're survivors or whether they're victims or whether there's just something in between. And so in order to pull this stuff together, we had to get a lot of things out of the way. One of the things I want to say about SASHA Center in particular is that we were very deliberate on several levels. We did a needs assessment and a community analysis, and we asked lots of folks if there was an organization like this that would support and talk about issues related to rape and sexual assault, what would it look like? And one of the things is that we were like, there are 2 other agencies in the city that provide individual counseling, but one of the main complaints we got from lots of people is that there are no support groups. 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 So we said, well, why don't we open this organization and just do everything in terms of doing support groups, in terms of doing activism activities and events and things of that nature. And whether the government believes this or not, or even therapists for that matter, events can be cathartic. And events can be healing. But we ain't tracking that. I don't know why we're not tracking it. We should, right? And so we're very deliberate about how we create our events and what we do around these things. Our tagline from SASHA Center, which was influenced by my sister here, is healing is possible. We call it the HIP series. And we have these tough conversations. And one of the things that we do, even after we've unpacked the most hurtful, the most harrowing things, we always ask, what is the good news? What is the good news? And we allow people to have that language. And so one of the things I want to talk about, too, related to SASHA Center is it's not easy being unapologetic. First of all, I am a person who is married to a person who is the same gender as I. So when I opened up this agency, even the folks who've known me for years, oh, okay, so that's good. The LGBT community really needs this. Well, but this ain't just, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's not just for the LGBT community, and why are you saying that? Oh, I forgot, because I'm a lesbian. Oh, I get it. But then I got to fight that. Then we know we need to engage community, the Christian and the religious communities of all kinds. And so people get in their feelings, even my board members. Why do you have to say that? And I say it every time. We will work with Reiki masters, we will work with evangelists, we will work with voodoo priestess and imams. We don't care. We're all in this together. And so we don't apologize for that. And what that means for us is a lot of challenges. Because if you can't get your own self out the way, and the other piece about SASHA Center is that we have to engage men. Most men don't do this. Most men don't even believe in this. But the problem is that good, well-meaning men are not having conversations with the men they know who are. And that's where our work comes in. And so the other thing that we did deliberately, because of all of the context that you've already heard, is every Wednesday night we have an open session, open discussion about sexual assault in our community. And black folks come, white folks come, Asian folks come, all kinds of folks come, but you are going to hear about lynching. You are going to hear about the slave, you're going to hear about Dr. DeGrew's work, post-traumatic slave syndrome, and you're going to hear about this stuff. This is what we do. This is what we talk about. And it's real interesting because in trying to engage facilitators, they have their own ideas about what this looks like. And so sometimes you facilitated groups for us, no one shows up. I've had a brother in the back, you facilitated groups for us just for men, to have the conversation. And so we're very deliberate about integrating all these pieces. And we are an integrative model. And here's the not so good news. And some people would look at it as a good news, but it's really a gap. And the gap is there are only 3 sexual assault specific programs in the state of Michigan. One is ran by a woman of color, and that's me. In the country, there is no other organization that exists like this. And we run the risk of closing in February. We have no more money after February 2016. We're going to continue to do the work. That's the good news. The nonprofit status is still there. We're going to make sure we pay that bill. That's $10 a year. We got that. But in terms of talking about brick and mortar space, We have facilitators who are extremely committed to doing this work and will continue to do it. We have memorandums of understandings with a couple of high schools in the area, a couple of homeless shelters in the area, and we have an MOU with the other sexual assault specific agency in the city of Detroit, which is Wayne County Safe. And we'll continue to do the work. We have a collaboration with an out-county agency called Haven, and we're doing a program called Redefine, which is being paid for by the Detroit Lions through Haven. Are y'all following me? It's being paid for by the Detroit Lions through Oakland County. And Oakland County had enough sense to know that because I've been working directly with the players for the last 7 years on domestic violence and sexual assault issues, that it would have been totally ridiculous for them not to give us a little bit. Because no one in Oakland County can come here in this city and understand the cultural context of which we exist and teach young black boys how to be respectful to little girls. So we have male facilitators that we've trained collectively together. And they're out there doing the work, and they're doing the best that they can. Unfortunately, the Lions aren't doing the best that they can. It's like we offer tickets, and they're like, yeah, nah. But I mean, you know, hey, it is what it is. And so one of the things in terms of talking about engaging men, I was asked to also discuss and talk about the extent to which I work with professional athletes around these issues. As a black woman, that is sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes it is challenging, to say the least. But my NFL relationship is specifically with the Lions, and that's because of their player development director who thought it was important to talk about these issues. And while that may sound glamorous as a social worker, trust me and know that wherever I'm navigating in spaces, people are in pain, so it ain't nothing glamorous about it. And some of the things that I hear and some of the things that I see. Now, I'm not trying to categorize and stereotype athletes, because in the last 4 years I've learned that these athletes are not just dumb jocks. Very smart, intelligent, forward-thinking, understanding, listening kinds of people. I was just with a team 2 days ago, and I had 3 perspectives happening in the room at the same time. One player said, men can do something about this, and it's not just a woman's issue. The other player said, it ain't none of my business and I'm staying out of it. Another player said, what if I do get in it and somebody pulls out a gun? And so that's just telling me how much more work we have to do, how much more we have to talk about around those issues. I got a call from NASCAR today. And this is the good news. They want to talk about it. They don't know what they're getting in the room until I show up, right? I send all the nice, pretty stuff, but when we get there, we have real conversations about keeping women and children safe and helping them also become more astute in terms of understanding the man box, understanding the socialization of men also impacts how they see and view women, which can put them at risk of committing sexual assault. Not even knowing what consent is, those kind of things. One of the other things I want to talk about, too, is that we at the SASHA Center understand that part of doing this work and what we've learned over the years and what black women have told us is what has been taught to them, which is once this happens to me, if I just forget it, I'll be healed. And if I just keep it with me, it makes me stronger. If I take it to my grave, that's what I'm supposed to do. And it's a badge of honor in some ways to do that. That's a lot of weight to carry for a long time. It's a lot of protecting that we're doing for a long time. And one of the things that we talk about is that you're never going to forget this experience. You have to integrate it. And we don't know how we've integrated. We don't really know. There's not enough research out here about what black women do related to rape and sexual assault. The last peer-reviewed article that was written about that was me and Dr. West, you know, for VAWA. Sexual violence and the loss of black women, look it up. It's on our website, too. It's like the last peer-reviewed article written about that, and that was 2 years ago. So we still need people, those of you who are in school, those of you who are thinking about pursuing your PhDs and your topics. If it's not too late to select your topics, start thinking about some of this work. Because there's not a lot. There's not a lot out there. And you don't have to be black to do it. You can be any race and do it. You know, and that's really what allyship is about. So on Wednesday night, we have conversations about skin tone and how that impacts the way we heal from rape and sexual abuse in the African American community. We talk about food and hair and clothing. We talk about all these things that impact us. When I worked at the Detroit Police Department, light-skinned girls just got better treatment. I saw it for my own self. You're not going to take a picture of that? Well, she's too dark. That's not going to show up anyway. That kind of stuff. Being committed by our own people. So we didn't talk about intraracial racism and how that impacts us and how we heal and don't heal, or how we discuss and don't discuss. And that's some of the stuff that we unpack at the SASHA Center as well. In terms of talking about our healing practices, we do a support group in an urban garden. We partner with Earthworks. We've done a knitting group in the Southwest community with Spanish-speaking women and Black Spanish-speaking women, where they just knit and talk about sexual assault and healing. We actually have done a plethora of workshops that are just, you know, even when we start our sessions, one of the things at SASHA Center that we do is we talk about ancestor reverence. You think about the Sankofa, you know, and when we're thinking about Sankofa, it's a symbol of a bird that's actually from Ghana, and it's looking back, but its chest is forward. You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And so we are deliberate and intentional in acknowledging our African traditional kinds of ways of community and language. And so we will have something like a smudging ceremony, or we will talk about the impact of slavery, or we will have an ancestor reverence exercise where we're acknowledging those who have come before us. What kind of lessons? And one of the questions we ask our survivors is, you know, think of an ancestor in your life who's no longer living, even if you never met them, and even if they're just close and not really necessarily blood related. What would they say to you about healing from sexual abuse and assault? What would they say to you? What do you think they would want for your life? Being very deliberate. And I've had survivors tell me things such as, like, we'll ask, what do you have to look forward to as you get on your journey? Not a destination. It's definitely a journey. And I had a survivor once tell me, I just want to be able to read a book without interrupting thoughts of my father touching me. And if she can read a book, she can read 2 books. She can go to college. She can read to her children. And so being able to help them and us identify collectively together what healing looks like. And I don't want to keep you, I know we got to move on, but one of the things that I want to talk about is the funding challenges at SASHA Center. We had a grant that was for culturally and linguistically specific services. It was not renewed. And it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because when you're funded by government, they want you to do things certain ways. But if you can be funded by your own community or find ways to be funded where the dollars are free, then you are not held in this box that says that you have to do 6 sessions about these particular topics, you know, so that's one of our challenges. But we're going to face that challenge. We are prepared to deal with the worst possible case scenario. We still want to provide services. It just probably will look a little different. And overall, I would say the coalition has been extremely supportive. Members of the community have been extremely supportive. But when you ask just basic community members, can you give money to an organization that's for black women and rape? What do you think they're going to say? That don't make me feel good. If it's a kids organization, maybe. And then there's the implication that it's our fault and that we're unrapeable and that we should have done something, worn something, did something different. And you wouldn't even have to have this organization. I had a rap artist tell me on the phone, what are you talking about? You opened up a nonprofit organization for black women that are being raped. They ain't being raped, and if they are, they lying about it, and that ain't happened since slavery. Specifically, that was said to me. And I'll say who said it, Professor Griff from Public Enemy. He did it. Put him on blast. That's what he said to me. And he's supposed to be about black and all about consciousness and all of this stuff. I called his manager and I told him directly. He called me back and apologized. I said, not only do you apologize, I'm not accepting it right now, I didn't move, but you got to do something different. And if you can't do something physically, openly different, do this for me. Talk to your 14-year-old daughter and ask her, does she know somebody who's been sexually assaulted? So here's a brochure. I want to make sure that you all get a copy of it. There's a whole lot of things I could say. I just want to keep it moving. But we have all kinds of groups. We have a poetry group. We have a group that just explores spirituality. We have a group for women whose kits were never processed. 81% of the sexual assault kits in this city that were not processed were black women. 81%.
And it was 11,000 untested rape kits.
11,000 plus untested rape kits in the city. So the whole time I was working at the Rape Counseling Center seeing survivors every day, those kits were being thrown into a locker basically downtown and not being examined or anything like that. So in talking about the good news, healing is possible. In terms of talking about the good news, I challenge each and every one of us to figure out how and where we fit in terms of doing this work. We have to do it. It needs to be done. We are always looking for supporters, volunteers, donations, whatever it is that you feel you want to give to the organization. We're right down the street at 2727 2nd. And we have groups out in the community. If you know of an organization that could benefit from a group, let us know. And then we get a lot of volunteers that call us and they say, what can I do? And one of the things we say is, you know somebody who's surviving in silence and surviving in isolation or trying to manage without the support that they need. Can you bring them? Can we talk about it in that way? Because yes, people do look at us like we're foreign because we're talking about something that nobody really wants to talk about. So again, piggybacking on what Lori said, I honor you all, each and every one of you, for being here and willing to have this conversation and listen to what we have to say about it. But the dialogue should continue even after tonight, for sure. And that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Born and raised in the city of Detroit. Love the city of Detroit. And we'll continue to do this work until I can't anymore. Thank you. Thank you.